And welcome you back to the Rant Network. And I'm going to ask you a question. When you watch the news and all you see is Trump, 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 you think there's anything else going on in the world, like the world's enemies getting together to try to scare the crap out of us? Does that mean anything? Hold that thought. Well, welcome back to the Rent Network with Stuart Brisgell. To my left, I'm David Solomon. We dive into raw, unfiltered chat spanning news, pop culture, politics, and way more. Whether we're dissecting today's absurdities or delving into society's deep seated issues, we're here to keep it real. Buckle up. Let's get your voice out there. You're now tuned into the Rant Network. Let's go. So, what was I referring to before was really simple. And Stuart, when you and I chatted about this before we started this podcast, you brought up World War II. And it was even before World War II. It was before World War One when the world got together and said, "If you attack me and and that's how World War One broke out because a prince was killed in an attack in Eastern Europe, and that's how World War One broke out. The world learned nothing from that experience. Fast forward to World War Two. Hitler gets his axis of powers, right? Brings in he's got Spain, but Spain ends up in a civil war and never really ends up with anything. But he's got Japan and Italy as the axis of powers. And the statement was, if you attack me, meaning England, France, or anybody else, the three of us are going to defend each other. And then we ended up with the worst war in history. And here we are today in 2023. And the media's focus on Donald Trump, impeachments, stupidity like that is clouding the media's judgment. And for that matter, other offices, we'll get to that in a second, where North Korea, Stuart, yesterday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed complete support for Russia. Just, his, summit with President Vladimir Putin. And the United States warned that this could lead to a deal to supply ammunition for Moscow's war in Ukraine. And this is way down in any news feed. This isn't front page news of where this is going to go. Stuart, what do you think of the fact that many people around this world, or especially in the Western world, are just not paying attention to what's going on out there?
If you played Risk or Stratego or Axis and Allies, you may be able to follow along a lot easier. First, you need to have a bunch of friends that all agree that being a bad dictator, which, by the way, they never thought they were bad dictators. Again, an oxymoron, what's a good dictator? But they all believed that they were divine and running something better than people can run themselves. And yet, the world remains silent today, consumed with Biden's laptops, Kamala's hyena laugh, Donald Trump's meddling of whatever they can figure out he's meddled in now, and the current up and coming election. But the world remains silent as countries like Iran, North Korea, China, Russia all get a heck of a lot cozier, with the three largest ones physically getting together just moments ago. When Kim Jong-un says, I will support Russia and give them all the military needs it has on destroying the Ukrainian people. And then you have China, who's like, I've got ambitions in taking Taiwan. All these countries have remained silent over anyone else's sovereign rights. What are sovereign rights? Why didn't America go into Canada and take it over? Because Canada has sovereign rights. Doesn't have a military that would stand a chance. Sorry, Canada. And Mexico as well. But United States remains at your borders for 200 and some odd years for just those reasons. And it pains me to say that if you take these three countries and then you add Iran, Iraq, India, Brazil, Cuba, it's starting to play out like a board game. And this chess game has been going on for a long time. And this administration is asleep at the wheel. Because, even though that, like in World War II, you had Spain that was very chummy with Adolf Hitler remain on the sidelines for the most part because he really wasn't needed to get in. We believe he provided other support, right, to Adolf Hitler. But you had Benito Mussolini who got in really good. So if you stand together with a dog with fleas, you're going to get fleas. And if you're going to feed an animal that can devour countries and murder people, that's very scary. David, you were just in Europe.
Well, Stuart, I'm going to tell you something. What's scaring me is the parallels between the 1930s and today. And again, look at the politics that are out there today. We had the divisive politics in the 1930s. Socialism, communism was exploding onto the scene here. People on the left was pulling further to the left. People on the right were pulling the right, getting the war. All these are historical things. You could look it up and you could say the parallels are incredible. But again, we're talking about people who just want to ignore reality. Joe Biden goes to make a deal with Iran, trading, a bunch of prisoners, and then releases billions of dollars in economic aid so that Iran, what are they going to do? They're going to build their arsenal, just like Hitler did. And the way Joe Biden sounds when he's talking almost reminds me of Neville Chamberlain, who got off the plane in 1938 and with a piece of paper and says, "I have here, peace in our times." There is no peace in our times, folks. North Korea fired 2 missiles into the sea yesterday as part of a ballistic missile test. South Korea is on high alert. Kim Jong-un is looking for Russia to give them more support to help them with their missile launches. Iran is looking for military arms, nuclear war. This is this triangle, this axis of hate, this axis, as you will, scares the crap out of us. Should scare the crap out of us, and instead, we're focusing on Nancy Pelosi is old. Mitch McConnell is old. The problem right now, ladies and gentlemen, is that we don't have leadership in the West. It's really very hard to find anybody, whether it's Donald Trump or, for that matter, it's Joe Biden. We don't have a leadership. We don't understand how to deal with dictators. There are dictators in these countries, and we think that if we apply simple Americanized democracy, it doesn't work. Or better yet, let's flex our muscles. It doesn't seem to work. We're watching China, part of this quiet little axis that we haven't even talked about, attacking the United States economically. Right, Stuart? Like we've seen in trying to get rid of the American dollar, asking Saudi Arabia to sell them oil, not in US dollars, but in yuan. Now, that sounds like to the average person that says, who cares? It's like, oh, when I'm traveling, why do you care what currency I'm taking? It makes a huge difference in economics. And here, China is trying to completely destroy the United States economically. These other powers are trying to destroy the United States physically, and we sit silent. The G20 in India. I mean, who should have been there? Russia should have been there. They're not invited. It's a scary world, how the world, it's just, we're ignoring the signs, and you're going to say it's eccentricism. It's not. When you have dictators like Kim Jong-un and Putin and the Ayatollahs in Iran and Xi in China, you call it risk, Stuart? What was the old, the slogan for risk? Global domination. That's what they're seeking right now. The media, the White House, all the parliaments in the Western world are somewhat too silent for my liking.
You know, so Winston Churchill used to be the famed person who used to talk about lead with strength, not weakness. Lead without having to follow. Govern without having to apologize. The world has lost its place, as far as I'm concerned, the Western world. They don't want to lead, they don't want to be bothered. People want to look in their iPhones and look at their Snapchats, look at their TikToks. People don't look around them anymore. People are not willing to see through a clear lens. Everyone wants to see it through an editorial optic blur and be told you should be okay with how much money you have in your pocket. You shouldn't want to have more. You shouldn't want to win that football game. You just want to participate. The media doesn't want you to be aware. And that, David, is the most frightening thing I can tell you these days. I'm sorry. It's kind of a weird rant for us, but I can't,
No.
I just can't, from yesterday's disbelief, 22 years since September 11th, to today acknowledging these world axes of evil being as chummy as Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini were. This is frightening, David.
And Stuart, it's what's amazing. And I mean, as a history political science major, I got to tell you, this is what bothers me. Is when I studied this back in back in 89, 90, we keep seeing the same things repeat itself. The allies are here, the enemies are here, and they keep saying, you go after me, I go after you. And it was very subtle. Now it's not so subtle, but it's so obvious. And instead, the world sits there, is unprepared. If tomorrow morning, God forbid, let's take an example, North Korea attacks South Korea, which they keep threatening since the 1950s, what's going to happen? Because back in the day, that's where they thought World War III could start. It's either the Middle East, North Korea and South Korea, Russia attacking the United States. Is the world ready for such an attack? Or is this Ukraine all over again, where we're just going to send arms to a country and said, you're on your own, buddy? Because that's what happened. So I don't know, Stuart, frankly, if with these dictators, if anybody is really ready, and like I said, without any real leadership, I think the answer is no. You have any last words there, Stuart?
The last word is wake up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a scary world. And once again, finding the right news. And this is what amazes me. When you brought up the subject, Stuart, I had to go really well into my feed. And I found it on CTV, believe it or not, well into my feed about the meeting between Russia and North Korea. It just shows you how lousy the media is. And other American media couldn't find it at all. It's kind of scary. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning into the Rant Network today. We trust you found value in today's podcast. Catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon Eastern. Check us out on social media. Share it with your friends. We really and genuinely value your feedback. And until Friday, let's keep those conversations alive and keep on ranting.